Steve O'Lear, who I believe was news director, and as such, since I worked in the sales department upstairs, had very little contact other than to pass, you know. But he was very highly respected by all the employees. He was a staunch Catholic, but it wasn't the kind of thing where he'd hammer you. It was just a part of his life. Just like Randy Ollis's faith has been so much a part of his life, Steve O'Lear was the same way. Well, in October of '56, when I had only been at WISH for a few months, my sister was having emergency cesarean section at Coleman Hospital, and I had wanted to have a candle lit at St. Peter and Paul Cathedral, which was across the street from WISH in those days. And I didn't have any idea how to do it. So I knocked on Mr. O'Lear's door rather timidly and explained the situation and asked if he could instruct me on what to do. He said, "Don't bother about it. Go to the hospital, be with your family. I'll take care of things." I fully expected him to just call somebody at St. Peter and Paul and have a candle lit. We're sitting there in the waiting room at Coleman Hospital, unable to go up and see my sister because they were prepping her for surgery. And in walks a priest from what I believe was St. John's Catholic Church. I'm not sure which, but I think it was one very close to Coleman. It seems that Steve O'Lear had gone above and beyond and contacted the closest parish and asked for a priest to come over to the hospital and be with the family, because at that time, remember in 1956 things were more difficult. We honestly did not know if my sister or the baby would survive. And he spent quite a bit of time that evening with the family, and then later with my sister and her newborn daughter. And it was all because Steve O'Lear, who didn't really know this lowly little secretary from the second floor, except that he'd see her in passing, but he went above and beyond to contact somebody to be there with us in what was a very difficult time for us. It had a lasting impact on my family every time they would hear.
What became of the little baby?
Oh, as I said, she is still in Martinsville. She has lived there all her life. She is now 68 years old, mother of 3, grandmother of 10. Have I counted right on the grandchildren? I think so. And just recently became a great-grandmother for the second time. So they had several children, and every one of their children, their names started with an S. And it was kind of a running joke around some of the employees, which is going to run out first, the names beginning with an S or Steve's children.
Was his wife's name also an S, as far as you knew? Steve and Susan or something?
I beg your pardon?
Like his wife, his name is Steve, and all
Yeah.
his children have an S. Did his wife have an S name?
I think so, but I honestly don't remember her name now, but yeah.
And as a little epilogue for that, you mentioned that little baby. What became of the little baby?
Oh, as I said, she is still in Martinsville. She has lived there all her life. She is now 68 years old, mother of 3, grandmother of 10. Have I counted right on the grandchildren? I think so. And just recently became a great-grandmother for the second time. So
it all worked out very well.
It worked out very well, yes.
He's a good priest.
Yes.
Where was Coleman Hospital? Is that one?
It was part of the complex over there. There was Coleman. Coleman was a women's hospital. There was a men's hospital, and then there was a general hospital.
Just kind of by like St. Vincent's, or kind of up that way, or over here by where Methodist and Eskenazi and everything is. That
No, it was.
I can look it up later, but yeah, I never heard of Coleman.
I can't. Was it an IU complex? I can't remember. Dr. Sprague Gardner was the obstetrician who took care of my sister and delivered my baby niece. And he at that time was the preeminent obstetrician in central Indiana. And then years later I read about him because Julie Nixon Eisenhower was flying across country for something out on the West Coast and had a medical emergency. And the plane landed in Indianapolis, and Dr. Gardner was the same one who operated on Julie Nixon Eisenhower. He was another very impressive person. As I said, he was and in the 50s, most babies were delivered by family doctors. You only went to an obstetrician if you were upper class or in an emergency. So I do remember that when my brother-in-law met with him after the baby was born. My brother-in-law worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield in those days, and he went to Dr. Gardner, and knowing the kind of fees he commanded, he said, it's going to take me a little while to pay this off. I can only do it a little bit at a time. And Dr. Gardner said, don't worry about it. Whatever your insurance pays, that will cover it. And this man could get huge fees for his skills, but he treated an ordinary person. Just don't worry about it. Whatever your insurance pays, we'll settle for that.
That's awesome. That's great.
And then he turns around a few years later and takes care of the president's daughter.